Welcome to the Pop Docs channel. We're back here with another video, a Wheel of Time video, the literary universe of Wheel of Time. We are talking about Book 2, Entry 2, The Great Hunt, right over my shoulder here. There it is, the spine of the book jacket there, The Great Hunt. And got my sister Deni with me to talk about this because she is a new reader of the Wheel of Time. How far are you currently in your first read through? And I emphasize first read through because I expect rereads after you go through all series once.
I don't know if I'll ever make it through another reread. They're big books and they take quite a lot of time. But I am on book 5 currently, The Fires of Heaven, and I have been enjoying them immensely. Despite them being very big books with tiny little text, they have been they live up to their legendary status.
So far, at least.
So far, at least, yes.
They're 4.5 of 14, I believe, is the full series, if I remember correctly. I could just count above my head here, but I'm not going to do that. And just dead air. But you read this particular book, The Great Hunt, before season 2 of the TV show. Yep. So you kind of had an idea going into the season 2 what might happen. Mm-hmm. We've talked about in other venues on our channel and on our podcast about whether or not we thought it lived up to The Great Hunt, the show that is. But we're not talking about the show today, although undoubtedly we always seem to bring it up, or at least I always do. So undoubtedly we'll probably have interjections with the show. But for this particular video, just wanted to chat, get your view on The Great Hunt. This, to kind of spoil things, is my favorite book of the series. And so I'm really looking forward to talking about this particular entry, this particular chapter. So before we jump in, Deni, what did you expect going into this? If you could put yourself back in the mindset of finishing The Eye of the World and the bonkers ending to that particular entry, which people still are confused by as to what exactly happened in The Eye of the World.
Still to this day.
What did you expect? Did you expect anything coming into The Great Hunt after that?
Well, after that, I had no real clue of how they were going to lead off from there. Because, as you just mentioned, it is a very baffling ending. So no real expectation other than, as you're holding the book and looking at the book cover, and it's called The Great Hunt. And there is, a picture of the Horn of Elvir on there. Horn of Valir, good lord. On there, and you got Moraine or Lanfear probably. I don't know who's actually on this cover.
I was gonna say, it looks like you're looking at the cover at the moment.
I am looking at the cover on this, but just looking at that based off of it,
I think it's Celine, Rand, and Loyal, I think, are the three kind of principals on the cover.
So.
That traditional cover, that cover right there.
Decipher it as, yeah.
With Trollocs, I believe, in the forest around them.
I think
preparing to launch an attack.
Yeah. But just based off of, the cover and the name of it, I'm going to take a wild guess that there's a great hunt that's going to happen for something, and it's going to be the Horn of Valir.
Were you a little disappointed that it didn't look like a French horn in the show? Because it's
a little bit.
It's kind of what it looks like on the cover of the book.
A little bit. I mean, yeah, when I think of like a horn, like that would summon an army from the dead or something, it would be more of that like kind of elaborate, very intricate, detailed, kind of beautiful looking horn or something. Kind of like that on the cover. And what was in the show was very... Not the choice I probably would have gone with, but that's just
it was a futuristic looking kind of flower vase that you might get at like Kirkland. I think that's what isn't that Kirkland, a store chain that sells home goods and stuff?
Yeah, Kirkland home goods store. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my kind of I'm trying to remember going back decades, unfortunately, a couple decades now, to when I first read this. Similar thoughts, which I think is what you're kind of alluding to, the cover evokes. Mm-hmm. And the title also evokes. But I think, in my recollection, I could be wrong with this, but I believe there were references to the Hunt of the Horn in The Eye of the World, that there was a hunt, the hunt was being called again in Ilion. And so there was some groundwork laid for the great hunt that we then see, although certainly in a different capacity than what
Yes.
they probably anticipated in Ilion when they launched the hunt for the horn.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, very exciting. So, what surprised you? Did anything surprise you? Did you, as you're reading through it, everything kind of fall how you anticipated, you expected? Obviously, there's a hunt, so we can move past that. Yes, that was probably not surprising. But everything else that happened, what was it, if anything, that kind of surprised you about this entry?
I think what I enjoyed, and I guess you could say was surprising, was that, the band of heroes breaks up and goes their separate ways. And you get to see them in all their different, kind of like going down their different paths, and the paths had unexpected twists to them, like each of them, which I thought was really cool. This book, I can see why it's your favorite book of the series. Having not read the whole series, of course, obviously, I'm only on book 5, but I didn't think there was anything in this book that I didn't like, really. I thought every storyline made sense. I liked all the action. I liked like, for example, another storyline, Rand's, of course, when they're trying to go after Fane, Pat and Fane and the Horn. They end up going through the portal stones, which are such a cool part of the world, in my opinion.
A couple times, yeah, they go through use the portal stones,
and it was just the way that Robert Jordan like described them and told that side of the world and stuff was so trippy and very cool. Like, I love that kind of stuff. And so when he goes through and you get to see him go through that, and then he basically ends up releasing, Selene, excuse me, but then you find out at the end of the book that it's Lanfear, one of the big Forsakens. Is just, I thought it was brilliant and was so well done. I love.
Well, I believe it's implied that she's actually the one that activated the first portal stone and pulled Rand and Huron and Loyal into the mirror world, basically,
Mirror world, yeah.
where they run into her and the Grom in that mirror world. And so she, she essentially set that in motion. And then the second time is when Rand, one of the great kind of sequences, I think, in the whole series is the flicker scene where he's not sure what he's actually doing, and he uses the Pearl Stone, and he forces everybody with him to relive various moments throughout their spiritual history, I guess. And he loses every time. I win again, lose there. Yeah, so it's Portal Stone's a very interesting mode. Do you anticipate ever seeing those on the show? We haven't seen them. At least as far as our knowledge, we haven't seen them yet. Do you think that they'll make their way onto the screen?
We may have talked about this in our reviews of the show at some point. But I think we were kind of landing on that they probably won't. Probably because of the intricacy of it. And they did do the way gates, so I guess that's one thing to say. So maybe, if they do those, maybe they'll do portal stones. But I don't know. For the show, I can see them possibly just skipping over that element, especially since they already introduced Lanfear in a completely different way. So why bother at this point, unless there's some key moment in the future of the series that I haven't reached that involves portal stones that are like a key element. I can see them just being like, we won't bother with that. We got waygates. We're good with that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, if you're going to introduce them, doing so in the way that the Great Hunt introduces them would make the most sense. Because my recollection was those are like two of the biggest scenes with portal stones, from what I can recall, going back many years now to the latter portion of the books. And yeah, I'll leave it there because to say more could potentially be spoilers for places you haven't gotten to yet. So a little I am kind of disappointed, but I can understand also why they didn't include it.
Yeah.
Another kind of mystical, magical way to travel great distances very quickly.
Yeah, it's like next to the ways. Really?
I do kind of, and this is to a certain extent, critique of kind of how the shows use Pad and Fane. But I really, one of the things I liked about this book that I thought was really interesting is it kind of expanded on Pad and Fane's corruption. Because my recollection, he was able to basically manipulate Mach and Shin in the ways and bar them from using the ways because they open the way gates and Mach and Shin's there.
Yep.
Which I believe was implied that Fane was somehow ordering around, commanding Mach and Shin. And Pad and Fane, in many ways, is like the main baddie in this book. And so I just wish they would have done more with Pad and Fane. And they might still do more with him now that Shamel's gone in the show. Maybe he'll take a more prominent role because we haven't gotten to it yet, and we won't get to it in this video. But obviously, he plays a big role in the Two Rivers and the Shadow Rising.
Yep.
So we'll see what the show does with that. But I going back to the Pearl Stones, I think you're absolutely right that they're probably not going to introduce it now. But maybe it is. That's what they can do for the remake. 30 years down the road when they remake the show again. Who knows? Yeah.
Or so, a different age. Different age of the world, and when the portal stones were like very prevalent or something.
Yeah. So a couple of things I really like. The reason why this is my favorite. One is I think we really get a feel for the vastness and the richness of the world in this particular entry. You get a little bit of it, obviously, in the Eye of the World because they're traveling from point A to point B, and they stop along points A1, A2, et cetera, et cetera. But I still think in this particular entry, you really see the world open up because we get Karien, we get the Portal Stones worlds, we get Falm, we get the White Tower, and kind of see the travels from up north where they started, Shinar as they travel down to Karien, then over to Falm. And you get to see all these different cities and cultures and peoples. Throwing in, get a little more of the Aes Sedai since we're now on the White Tower. And so just for me, like this story really opened up the world and really took what the foundation laid in the Eye of the World and really just expanded it in a wonderful textured way, which I think is also because I think he did generally a good job with characterization, even though there were only 2 POV chapters in the Eye of the World between Rand and Perrin. And I still think it's funny because I think I've heard a lot of people say that, Matt really doesn't come into his own until book 3 when you actually get his POV chapters. I still actually really liked Matt in this particular book too. And so I don't know. It worked for me. His characterization worked for me in this one.
Yeah, he was one of the unexpected parts of this book, considering he is the one who ends up with the horn and ends up blowing it. And you're like, out of all the characters, he's the one who does it, which obviously sets up that he has a bigger role to play in the future, which is pretty cool. And then you get to see him, be a part of it and everything in a bigger way than he's been kind of coming along with, like, obviously the dagger, but then he gets this big moment with the horn that kind of levels it out a little bit there, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think also just structurally, this book felt to me much better in terms of pacing and also how he brought everybody together in Falm. And it made a lot more sense, certainly, than the show I thought did. But everybody's storyline seemed like it all it paid off in the end. It all fit together, I thought, really, really well. And then also, as you mentioned, with the reveal of Selene being Lanfear at the very end, these cliffhangers, they're not really, I guess they're kind of cliffhangers, but I think not in like the traditional sense. They're more kind of teases because it really did feel to me like he wrapped up a complete story in this book, even though we knew the last battle hadn't happened. So there's more to come. Mm-hmm. But there did seem to be a lot of closure, at least for these storylines. And so I also just think it was structured really well and written really well. Better certainly than the Eye of the World, where, as we just alluded to, the end of the Eye of the World's kind of a muddied mess in some respects, and bonkers in so many regards.
At the end of this one, you at least got a win out of it. Like, the good guys won at least this battle, but still had ominous tones as they reveal that Lanfear is Selene, and you're like, oh,
yeah. Even though she did seem a little sketchy for a good portion of the book.
I I mean, she definitely, like, you, as reading it, you want to shake Rand and be like, what is wrong with you? You can't be that just, like, smitten by a gorgeous woman that you're just gonna, like, brush off her weirdness. She is
Everybody was smitten, though. I think, wasn't even Loyal, like, even Loyal, there's some kind of comment, like, he couldn't help but, like, look at her, too, because her beauty was just so radiant. It was a little overboard. I was like, oh, my, okay, we get it, Robert. We get it, Robert Jordan.
She's like the most beautiful woman that's ever been created. I get it, but like at the same time, she is just so like blunt in certain parts, and just so like her mood swings occasionally here and there.
Well, you can tell she's manipulating him the entire time.
You would think at some point.
You want the glory. Seize the glory for yourself. You have the power. I do like then she does like peace out though when he gets to Carienne.
Yeah.
She's like, I got stuff I gotta do. You're kind of frustrating me now and annoying me. We'll talk again later. Good luck.
Excellent child. Good lord.
Well, that was another one of my parts I love the whole game of houses with all the letters, and that everyone, like, the fact that he was destroying every letter and not responding actually gave him more cachet and like built his reputation up among the houses. It was a really interesting take on that kind of culture, and really would have like give it that city and that land texture, and also comical at the same time. Leading up to the party at Barthanes' mansion that devolves into chaos.
Yes.
And we get fireworks. We had fireworks
the illuminators.
Yeah, the illuminators.
Which I thought was so like a fun introduction to them. That they, like these people who are basically like chemists and creating fireworks, and they're like this guild, and they're like well renowned and stuff. It's just I love that detail in the book and the overall world building of like.
Yeah, and they're all very secret. They guard their recipes very closely. They don't want to get out.
Like literally, their guild building's like Fort Knox. Like you can't even like, get in to get the fireworks, and they end up like blowing it up, which is hilarious.
The whole Carienne sequence is just great. I think from start to finish, it was so good. Everything that happened there. Anything other things generally speaking that you liked before we transition? We're going to talk about specific moments that you liked and or didn't like. It sounds like from our conversation, it's going to weigh more heavily in those moments that we liked and we didn't like.
Yeah.
Any other kind of general things that you liked? And if you want to kind of throw it in here, was there anything that did that you would offer as constructive criticism, or something that you didn't really like in this particular entry?
Criticism. I mean, I'm trying to think of anything that's really constructive criticism, but
I can lead off here because I got one. It's a general one. Is Bazelman again just popping up at the end and then fighting Rand, and then being defeated and disappearing. The fight in the sky. The fight in the sky. And where he beats the fire guy.
It was a little bit of a bizarre battle in the sky. It's like Robert Jordan just cannot help himself with having some kind of weird like interaction, like some weird fight. It had to be up portrayed in the sky. You're like, oh,
bannered across the sky in flame will be his presence known. Announced.
Please.
I've never liked the crazy Balsamon, the fire face, the furnaces for eyes and the mouth and whatnot. And so I've never really liked that Shamael. And so that was probably the biggest critique I would have, not critique, but the thing that just didn't work for me is you have the setup with, especially the Shan Chan as the big bads and Padden Fane as the big bad, and then I'm here too. Don't forget about me. I'm Balzamon. Let's fight. So that's probably the biggest kind of that's the thing that I dislike the most. And ultimately it wasn't that big a deal. But if I had to pick something out of this one, that would probably be the one thing I would highlight, because everything else as we've been talking about, I really liked. It's hard for me from this entry to think of something that I thought dragged or didn't work or annoyed me or frustrated me or I wish could have been done differently. So that's my one big thing.
Isn't this where This is where Rand gets his wound that is with him.
Yeah, his side wound.
Yeah, his side wound that never quite heals.
Mm-hmm.
But surprisingly, in the show, Elaine shows up and can magically heal it to like a good, good, safe, moderate wound.
But it doesn't look that healed at the end. I mean, it closed up, but it's like all that like black goo and stuff around. I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna. And the mode of the wound, of creating the wound, is different because the show was the dagger from Shadar Logoth, and obviously here was Balzamon.
Yeah.
Because Rand sheathed the sword is the move. Another great setup and payoff by Robert Jordan in the book. And that's one of the things, that so far has been missing from the show, like Lan teaching, especially Rand, to use weapons and sword fight. Got a little bit of that in episode 7, I think it was, of this season, very briefly. Yeah. But yeah, so that was cool. And then he fights the Blade Master, also the Shan Chen Blade Master, who he just
in the book though.
In the book, kill with fire darts or whatever in the show,
which was so lame. Like, I hated that translation of that fight. It's just because in the book it's actually very like detailed and interesting how they like are going at each other and stuff like that, and I enjoyed that part of it because you got to see a Blade Master, Sanchin.
However you want to say it, I say Shanshin. But it also made more sense in the book because it was basically a heist where they were trying to infiltrate the building to get the horn back, and so it made more sense than Rand just wanting to get to the tower because somehow he knew Egwene was there and this guy was in the way with his honor guard. I mean, I think we've talked about this, but it made more sense the way they did it in the show because if he, especially with the honor guard there, he's not going to sword fight everybody and prevail, let alone one person, because he doesn't know how to use the sword. He can do a cool spin move and put it around his shoulders or whatever, but I don't think it's going to avail you much in armed combat. So it made sense, but at the same time, it was a big buildup for kind of a mediocre payoff. And also, how do you learn to do that? He can barely channel the last episode. Whatever. We don't need to rehash that. We've been down that ground before in other videos in our podcast.
Back to the book.
Back to the book. All right. So let's transition a little bit here. Favorite moments from this book.
Favorite moments. Okay. Why don't you start with one of your favorite moments first, since this is your favorite book?
Okay. So one that I've referenced already, the Portal Stones, both Portal Stone moments. I just think it's such a cool idea, especially in the flicker scene, and
that is cool.
Both like the scene itself as it's playing out, but then also the aftermath of it and how it impacted all these other characters, especially Matt. It's like, I'll never betray you. I swear I'll never betray you. And Varen's like, you fool. You need to learn to control yourself, and you control your power. You're going to burn out. Another reason why I love this book, Varen's first appearance in the series. Yeah. And I love Varen. She's one of my favorite characters in the series. And so having her show up was really cool as well. And so I'll roll that into, since she was there for the Portal Stone moment, the Portal Stones, one of the cool moments for me.
Yeah, the Portal
so that's
Stones
up there.
Are definitely in the top of the list for sure. I'll kind of piggyback on something similar to that is Nynaeve and Egwene's testing in the tower, and you get to read those chapters and what it means to go through the arches, and you get to see each of their different experiences. I thought those chapters were really intriguing and riveting. Again, you get to see like another added layer into the world and what it means, to become the Aes Sedai, but also to experience like Tir Real and what these arches do to test them. It was just a really awesome aspect of getting to see what it's like in the tower and for their experiences doing that.
Did you like one set of tests more than the other? Like them both equally?
Okay. I have to think back to the book because obviously
your first thought is the show. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, just watch.
So I can give them to you. So Nynaeve's they were the first one. She was battling. I think it was Agenor. It was one of the Forsaken from the Eye of the World. Because it's Agenor and Balthamel, I believe, were the two that they encountered at the Eye of the World. And I think in her first test, it was Agenor only that she was battling. Okay. The second one, I believe, was she was back in the Two Rivers, and the New Wisdom was like a horrible person. I think it was implied that she was poisoning everybody.
Okay.
And Nynaeve like rolled back, and people saw Nynaeve and wanted her to help them and to protect her from the New Wisdom. And then the third one, she was married to Lan, and I believe they had children in that one, but they were up in, I believe, they're supposed to be in Lan's ancestral homeland. And she was happy. Yes. They were married.
I remember that. Yep.
And that was the one where she actually had, and just like in the show, kind of in the show, I don't think they actually did this 1-to-1, but she initially ignores the door, and the way that comes back but once left, and then she channeled it back into existence, which I still get on my show versus book hobby horse here again. As we talked about, I did not like the general portrayal and idea behind the show's version of the test, even though the individual scenes themselves were very well done. And Zoe Robbins was great in them.
Right. Fantastic. Yeah.
But so I much prefer the book versions. And then shifting so get away the show again. I can't help myself comparing the two. But Egwene's tests all centered around Rand, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
In different capacities. I forget the first one, but I know he was in. There was one where she was in a bunch of rubble, and he was trapped under rubble, and there were Shadow Spawn coming to get him, and kill him, capture him, whatever. And she had to leave him.
I remember that. I think she was like Green Aes Sedai in that.
And then the last one, if I remember correctly, she was Amyrlin, or some I believe she was Amyrlin. And Rand, they caught Rand, I believe, and they were going to gentle him. Okay. And it was, do you help him or do you go back? So I'm doing off the top of my head, I believe those were, generally speaking, those were the tests for each one.
Okay. Yeah. I think if I remember my feelings of when I read it, because it's I think I remember liking Nynaeve's more because they're a little more diversified versus Egwene's were all just kind of centered around Rand in different instances, but he always kind of still seemed similar, like the same. Like not very different other than her decisions that she makes in the moment. So I think Nynaeve's were more interesting just because they were a little more very different situations in each of them that really tested what she would do in those moments. So I think Nynaeve's would probably be my favorite.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly. And I also like the way that Nynaeve's were structured because it felt very Christmas Carol-like, because it felt like it was like past, present, and future.
Well, it's supposed to be like that.
It may be. I don't know if that was his inspiration. I mean, it would seemingly make sense.
They always set it up is that like they're all kind of centered around past, present, and future. But
they could. I mean, I don't recall that off the top of my head. You may very well be right. I just don't remember, or my recollection of Egwene's, I could see how you could fit it into a past, present, and future type of structure framework. It all just kind of seemed either future and or different, like a multiverse almost. Whereas Nynaeve's really felt to me like something from her past, something from her present, or what could be her present, and something for her future. And so I just thought there's more literary resonance with her. True. As well as you said, just giving her different circumstances to deal with from
I just remember her past. What I do remember when I was reading this book is that we used to play the PC game for Wheel of Time. And one of the things you did was you went through the arches to be tested. And you would always hear the voice that, like the way back comes but once, be steadfast. And so as reading the book, I was like, oh, it's so be steadfast. Yeah! Like I got so stoked about it. And then of course we come to the show and they don't say be steadfast in the show. And I was like, it's 2 words. It's literally 2 words. You couldn't fit that in the script.
Didn't have any screen time. Didn't have enough time.
I got so pissed in that moment because that's like one of the best lines. Oh, so iconic. And they just ruined it. Anyways, off my soapbox. That's my one big thing. But yes, I would say that like those chapters, the testing, getting to see that side of the Aes Sedai and the training in the tower were definitely some of the highlights, I think, of the book, for sure.
Yeah. So another one that we haven't really talked about is the door drawl, the famous door drawl, where they come upon the Myrddraal that's nailed to a door.
Yes. I forgot about that.
Shocked. How could this happen? Who could have done this? Mm-hmm. Who could have done this? Yeah. And so, I mean, there's just an iconic scene from the Great Hunt as they're looking for the horn chasing Badin Fane. Mm-hmm. And that whole scene is very creepy vibes. Okay. Largely culminating then in seeing the Myrddraal nailed to the door and clearly dead. Mm-hmm. And something that we kind of see in different ways in future books, the relationship between Padden Fane and Myrddraal.
He's not very nice to them, is he?
He's not very nice to anybody.
I mean,
Padden Fane is there's very little, if any, redeeming qualities to Padden Fane. Yeah. Especially in the books. The books, he's completely corrupted. Yeah. And from the outset, corrupted. A little wacky dude. Yeah, he's the Dark One's hound. Hound. Yeah. Any other moments? I mean, I can keep going with the moments. I already mentioned the other one. I loved the Game of Houses. I loved the letters and everything to Rand, and Rand getting exasperated by it.
But it's the Game of Houses,
which I don't think they mention in the show, and I wonder if that's. I think they might have called it Deus Damar because that was like the old tongue version. It. I'm trying to remember if they actually said Game of Houses. And I can see if they didn't, why they wouldn't, because people would be like, "Oh, Game of Houses." They're trying to be like Game of Thrones, even though this was created, I believe, before. Yeah, at least in book form, in written form.
Yeah, in the written word. Yeah, I don't know if they did either. And well, they definitely had the scenes of this, moment of insinuating the Game of Houses, but I don't know if they actually said it. Yeah. Anyways, well, I mean, speaking of Game of Houses, we learn that Tom Merrilin is around.
He's still around. He is alive back. And kicking. He is back. Well, alive anyway.
He's definitely alive, that's for sure.
A bad leg. He's got a bad leg.
He's shacked up with some hottie patati that he's teaching. I mean, she ends up getting murdered and killed, mm-hmm. But I mean, details.
And you know what happens after that? Tom Merrilin gets a little revenge, and plunges a nation into civil war. Civil war without end.
No big deal.
Yeah. Also a great seeing Tom again. Anytime Tom. I love Tom Merrilin. And I think he's coming back in the third season. I hope he's coming back in the third season of the show, because I also loved the show version of Tom Merrilin, even though
he was fantastic.
Aesthetically they're completely different looking from the description in the book. And
he's a sexy he was
Tom great.
A sexy Tom. Sexy Tom. In the book, you're like, okay.
Yeah, old man with the crazy mustache and the wild white hair.
Patchy cloak. Yeah, patch cloak.
Yeah. I also, another big moment that I wish we had seen in the show was the foam sequence, especially when the Trollocs burst in, free Padden Fane, they stole the horn and the dagger. It was a very creepy sequence, and it gave off a lot of horror vibes to me. And then the dark prophecy scrawled on the wall in blood. I just love that whole sequence. I thought it was a great way to start off the book with a bang. Mm-hmm. And it's a great inciting incident that then launches everybody forward. And so I just wish we had that in the show. But no, they clearly want to forget what happened in Shinar, because they don't mention anything, I don't believe.
Shove that aside. That never happened.
Related to that, another moment. I keep going here. Ingtar. That was still a surprise that is surprising and shocking to this day. That turns out he was the Dark Friend. Mm-hmm. He was the traitor, and he's spending the whole book trying to atone for his actions. And then they end up at the alleyway where one man can hold 50 or whatever the line was.
Yeah.
And he gets absolved of his sins by Rand and sacrifices himself. Which apparently they did shoot that scene in the show.
Oh, they actually shot it.
Yeah.
That would make more sense.
It's so obvious too that they had Ingtar's arc in the show, because like in that, I think it was the first episode when they're like burying their comrades or whatever, or burning the corpse. I can't remember exactly what they're doing. And he has that conversation with Perrin. Clearly they were setting up that he was a dark friend and he was the one that spearheaded the attack in Shinar. And then they clearly just ran out of time. And so they just scrapped the Coleman, which makes sense because I think non-book readers be like, who the heck is this guy? Why are we giving him so much screen time?
True.
But in the book, I think it works very well because you spend the whole book with Ingtar on the hunt, and I think it's a great twist, but also then at the same time some form of redemption for him. If you think he can be redeemed. So another great moment in the midst of the final battle at Falm, which is just, I think, great from start to finish for everybody's storylines.
Yeah.
Oh, you got any other moments? I feel like I'm hogging all this time, and
that's not hogging.
Here to get your take on this. Since you're the first reader.
I mean, I guess I will put in the kind of obvious one of the appearance of the Xianqun. I'm terrible at pronouncing.
You just need to pick one pronunciation and go with it.
Xianqun. We get them introduced. They invade, and you get to see a lot about them, and they are creepy mother effers. And
they have cool beasts that they bring with them in the books.
Cool beasts in the books, I know. And I got to read more about them in the fifth book, which I got even more excited about. And I was like, we're probably never going to see these on screen, and I was very upset.
We haven't even gotten like Dragcar yet. We haven't even gotten the full panoply of Shadow Spawn yet in the show.
I'm so disappointed. They don't have the budget. Damn it, Rings of Power.
Yeah, and certainly at this point, I think they are the most formidable villains.
Yeah.
That they are really scary. So much of like the Forsaken, especially Balzamon, he's just kind of a cartoon villain, kind of a Scooby-Doo villain. I would have gotten away with world domination too if it wasn't for those pesky kids from the Two Rivers. At least there's a little bit of nuance and with like Selene and Lanford. At least you can kind of detect she has a plan of what she's trying to accomplish.
True.
But not really Balzamon. He just shows up and spouts flames and fire and brimstone. So it's always why I thought this Shan-Chan were a good foil, because they're kind of the first foil that we see. And this was just the Forerunners. So we undoubtedly, most likely, that's what. Well, you've already said you've seen them pop up, and they were popped up in the Shadow Rising, kind of. And I think in the Dragon Reborn, Suroth makes a brief appearance. She's kind of been exiled off the coast of Randland, but she's biding her time and getting ready. So but yeah, the whole sequence, they're a great foil for our heroes to go up against. And the battle is just, and the White Cloaks are there too, but they're there. Don't remember the little boys with the urns that were releasing incense and smoke on the play. I don't remember that in the book, but hey, it was a good. I assume I could be wrong about this. I don't know, maybe, but I assume that not only was like a tactic for them, but I assume it was an allusion or a nod to when Matt blows the horn in the books, because there's like a mist that rolls in with the heroes of the horn when they appear. And I also love another great moment was like the conversation with Arthur Hawkwing when he first pops up, and we can't ride in without the banner. Get that banner up, Perrin Golden Eyes.
Damn it!
there are a lot of rules for these ghost warriors.
No. We need the banner up.
You gotta blow the horn. You gotta have the banner. Presumably, you need a stick for the banner to go on. All the rules. Like, can you just go fight the Shan-Chan and the White Cloaks for us, please? And who imposes these rules? Why are the I don't remember the ghosts in Lord of the Rings having any rules. They just came flooding out of the boats behind Aragorn.
Yeah.
I guess they did kind of have a rule that they only responded to the sword, which was the hallmark of the king. But whatever. Yeah.
There's always a sword. There's always a ring. There's always a horn. Like there's always some kind of
sorry
object.
Gotta go find the flugel door from the Dipsy Doodle Mountain or whatever. That's not what he said. I can't remember exactly what Conan said. But
it was close.
Close enough. Yeah, close enough.
Same idea.
One day we'll do our Conan episode for our channel, for our podcast, one of the two. Okay. So, favorite character.
Oh, favorite character.
And do you remember who your favorite character was in Eye of the World? If you could put yourself back there.
Oh gosh.
I always liked Matt, even though we never. I don't know why, but I just always liked Matt, both in the first one and I liked him again.
Well, he was just kind of like
the second one.
As much as Robert Jordan can do like comedic relief, like he was kind of like the comedic relief of the series. You know, he's like a lovable character. You can't not like him.
He's kind of the Peregrine Took. You know, he's always getting into trouble.
That's a good way of putting it.
He's always causing the party trouble. He's taking dark daggers, corrupted daggers, and.
Mm-hmm. That's true. He's just like always doing the things that he shouldn't be doing, basically.
Yeah. And he gets better, especially in the next several books. But for me, in both of these, for whatever reason, I always liked Matt. An honorable mention would be Varen. I just love Varen across the whole series. But I thought this was a great introduction. Like how she knows what's going on. Mm-hmm. She knows that Rand's the Dragon Reborn. At the very beginning, she is in with Swan and Moraine, and like an offhand comment just talks about how they're trying to protect the dragon, and they're like, "What? How does Varen know?" And she's kind of like, "What?" Her aloof nature. What's wrong? What's wrong? Because they're like thinking about how they're going to kill her because no one can know. I love Varen. I love Varen, and this whole book was a great introduction.
Yeah.
To her character. So she was definitely an honorable mention for me in terms of characters from this book.
Okay. I would say that, I'm trying to think if I had like a standout. I don't know if I necessarily had like a standout favorite character of the book. I thought they were all pretty well-rounded in this one, which was great. Coming out of the first book to go in here, and even as they split up, they all have really dynamic storylines that give them lots of great character building. But
so, did you have who was your favorite coming out of Eye of the World? Like you said,
I'm trying to remember.
It can't be Moraine. You love Gandalf, and she's basically the Gandalf.
Well, I think I may have said Moraine from the first book because she just had such a presence, and it was like the first introduction of the Aes Sedai, which was like awesome. So
she's largely the only. Elida shows up, but really it's just Moraine for the whole first book.
Yeah.
Outside of Elida.
So yeah. I think I may have.
Can't really say that this book though.
She's not my favorite. Yeah,
she's only one chapter, and then she shows up at the end.
Yeah, it's like she's not like in it. So I besides all that, I would probably say maybe Loyal is my favorite. I love him. He's just so lovable and innocent, and like he just wants to read his books and
write his book.
Write a book. And he's just like such a good friend and willing to help. And I'm just like, oh.
And he's trying to dodge all the people from his steading because he's terrified of them making him marry and settle down.
Yes. It's just like so cute and adorable. I love him so much. So I don't know. Maybe him.
That's a good pick. That's a lot. Hey, Loyal is a lot of people's favorite, both in the books and the TV, because I think they've done a good job adapting him, and the actor that plays him is like wonderful.
Very true. That's kind of probably my saddest part about the Fires of Heaven is that he's like not in it at all. So that's kind of probably my one. When we get to that book, that'll be my.
We'll get there.
Downside to the book so far, but
that's a tease.
Yeah. So I'll say Loyal is probably my favorite.
All right. Do you have a least favorite character?
I actually
both from the Eye of the World and from the Great Hunt.
Well,
Is it the same person?
Eye of the World, I don't remember. but I would say for the Great Hunt, my least favorite character, especially now in comparison to the show, is probably the introduction of Lanfear and Celine.
Oh, you don't like Celine Lanfear?
Her persona as Celine, because the show introduced her so differently, and so well done, in my opinion. I loved. Well, we already talked about how the actress is amazing, but also how they wrote her into the show was amazing, in my opinion. But in the books, I liked how they introduced her because it was kind of off the wall and portals and stuff like that. So I liked how they introduced, but just I don't know if Robert Jordan was just what kind of persona he was trying to write her as, but she just was not as like interesting or dynamic. It didn't come off the pages to me very well. She just honestly just seems like a cold-hearted, just like boring woman character. I don't know how to describe her as. She just was just very like one note. That's the best way I could put it. One note. For a Forsaken, very just like meh.
Well, up until this point, and we can continue this conversation when we get to the later books, and who knows, maybe it'll be the same response, same answer. But they are all of them are very shallow. Like they don't, especially in these first two books, you don't get a whole lot of what they want. No. I mean, Balsamon is just a mustache twirling cartoon villain, in my view. Agenor and Balthamel, they just pop up at the very end of Eye of the World, and they want power. They just want to suck the sardine out of the pool to gain power. You don't really get much more, and then they're off the chessboard very quickly. So I mean, they have kind of cool deaths because Balthamel, I think it's Balthamel, gets killed by the Green Man. Like the Green Man turns him into like a tree or something. Yeah. Whatever. And then I think just gets blasted with the one power. Yeah. And it's just incinerated. But there wasn't really much to them. And then even with Lanfear, we spend more time with Lanfear in this book. Mostly, as you mentioned, when she's Celine. But again, all she cares about, at least from what we can tell in this book, is she wants to be with Luce Theron. That's her whole raison d'etre to this point. Mm-hmm. And so I think you're absolutely right. They're very shallow characters. There's nothing to them, which also again goes back to why I liked the Shan-Chan as the foil, because there just seemed to be a little bit of depth to why they're there, who they are, why they showed up now, their hierarchy of society, what they're trying to do, what they're planning to do. And so there's just more to them, which I think makes them a more formidable villain or set of villains or force, as opposed to the Forsaken. Yeah, just one note.
Yeah.
No, I kind of agree with you on that. I could go with Celine / Lanfear, but I'd probably go with Balsamon. Which is so also ironic because they're my two most favorite characters in the show. Which is, I actually think this is one of the great things the show's done, is actually given some character to the villains. Outside of Pat and Fane, who is just there to hand people things, whether it's a horn or a dagger.
He's had creepy. He's had like creepy moments on the show, but he hasn't really had his time to shine. Shine, Pat and Fane, shine.
I'm of two minds. I'm trying to think of my least favorite character. I guess to a certain degree, Perrin. I don't know. Perrin just has never really appealed to me. And the wolf stuff, it's kind of cool, but Perrin kind of always has bored me. The two outside of Perrin, I will say Elaine, who to me kind of she grows on me as the series progresses. But I remember, reading through back this one, she's really just talking about Rand constantly. She encountered him one time in the gardens of the palace, and she can't get him out of her head. I mean, it's nice that she befriends Egwene, and then she goes with Egwene and Nynaeve, and she's there to help Nynaeve in the end. But so probably she was the kind of stale character. And I am of two minds of Leandrin, because Leandrin from the outset. From this book, she's evil. I mean, she's a villain in the way that she's written. She's clearly an antagonist from the get-go. And, of course, just gets escalated. But I will say, I much prefer how the book deals with her betrayal of Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine than the show does. Mm-hmm. In a whole host of ways. And I thought that whole sequence, one, made a lot more sense, and I thought was more devastating when they exit the Waygate and they're all the Shan-Chan. And then slowly they realize, oh no, this Aes Sedai has betrayed us. And also, what does that mean long term? Black Aja. Yeah. So I love that whole sequence, even though I thought Leandrin in the book is kind of one note, like a lot of the villains. You know, I think villains for Robert Jordan weren't writing villains was not his strongest suit.
No,
but
definitely not.
Still engaging. Obviously, still my favorite book of the whole series. So, but we can transition kind of as we end our discussion of The Great Hunt to this. I've already said it, but we'll relegate this to the books we're talking about in terms of ranking. So obviously, I'm going to rank this Eye of the World because this is my favorite book, and also, you know, betrays how I would rank future episodes where we talk about subsequent books. But for you, comparing this to Eye of the World, which one's better? Would you rank this one above Eye of the World or vice versa? And why?
Why? I also agree with this being ranked above the Eye of the World. I mean, it's for all the reasons that we already talked about. World building, all the characters had pretty great storylines. Lots of movement. There was so many great moments throughout it. It was pretty action packed, which was really great. It moved really nice. Like there wasn't. I'm trying to think if there was any moment where it got slow or, you know, like, come on, Robert Jordan, stop describing the wallpaper on the wall for like 10 pages. But nothing comes to mind, really. I felt like everything moved at a pace that was really, really well done. It had a great mix of good and evil and all that jazz. So yeah, I think that's probably why. It was just overall an improvement. I think Robert Jordan looked back on the Eye of the World and what he did and said, "This is pretty good, but I can do it better."
I can make it make some sense.
Yeah, and then he created the Great Hunt.
Although I still think the battle in the sky was always racking my brains. How is this working? And all I think, you know what I think about is the fight in Big Trouble in Little China between Lo Pan and Egg Shen.
That's a good one.
And it's like the two samurai warriors in armor fighting while they're doing a thing. That's how I always envisioned this happening.
Yes, that's a great comparison. Well, I feel like no matter what, Robert Jordan always has to have like a little sprinkle of just like fantasy cheese on it. A little sprinkle.
Oh yeah, it gets fantastical.
Yeah, I can't wait.
And the endings of other ones in the series get pretty fantastical too. But at least I'm trying to think, they all largely make sense relative to the Eye of the World, which is still
just
weird.
Honest.
Staircases into space and tendrils of darkness, and I don't know what the hell was going on at the end of that book.
A lot of just chaos. That's what.
But it kickstarted a great series, so there you go.
It did.
All right.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts on The Great Hunt before we shelve it and move on in future videos to the next installment?
It's a great book. That's my final thought.
That's a great final thought. Pithy, succinct, powerful.
It was great. The Great Hunt.
The Great
was
Hunt.
Great.
The Great Put that on the cover.
Review by Pop Dogs. It's great.
It was great. You can stop hunting through the bookstore. You found this great book. Anyway, that kind of lost the trail there. Okay, well, Deni, thank you for chatting about The Great Hunt and the Wheel of Time. Always fun to talk Wheel of Time in written form as well as visual form. So, for those interested in our other content, where might they find some of our other videos, our podcast episodes, our content?
Yes. You can find us on Instagram at the Pop Docs Pod and also on X Twitter at the Pop Docs. And then also check out our YouTube channel where this lovely video will live on in infamy at the Pop Docs. Follow us.
And if you like what we do and talk about, go ahead and give us a subscribe, like the video. But until next time, the Pop Docs Clinic is officially closed.
Toodles.